When you think about a huge construction project, what comes to mind? Probably steel beams, right? Concrete being poured. But way, way before any of that happens, there's another kind of blueprint that gets made, and that's the agreement between the owner and their architect or engineer. So today, we're going to dive into this super important document. But don't worry, we're not going to treat it like a bunch of boring legal jargon. We're going to look at it for what it really is, the absolute foundation for a great partnership.
I mean, that's the big question right there, isn't it? This whole agreement thing, it's about so much more than just a list of services and what they cost. It's really about making sure everyone is on the same page, building a solid working relationship that's not going to crack under the pressure of a big, complicated project. So let's get into it and break down how these things are actually put together.
All right, here's the game plan. First up, we'll touch on the industry standards that act as the foundation. Then we'll dig into the real meat of the deal, what we call basic services. After that, we'll check out the a la carte menu of extra services you can tack on. And hey, it's a two-way street, so we'll look at the owner's role too. And we'll wrap it all up with the one golden rule you've just got to remember.
Okay, so the good news is you're usually not starting with a totally blank page. The industry has these go-to standard forms. For architects, it's usually the AIA B101, and for engineers, you'll often see the EJCDC E-500. Just think of them as the standard templates, the starting point that most projects are going to build from.
So, what exactly is included in that standard package? What do you get right out of the box? Well, that brings us to the absolute core of the deal, a section called Basic Services. This part is the bedrock, the real foundation of the whole agreement. It lays out exactly what the architect or engineer is on the hook for once construction actually gets going.
Now, if you want to get technical, basic services is the official term for a super detailed list of duties that fall under something called Construction Contract Administration, or CCA. But listen, this isn't some vague promise to help out on the project. No. It's a very specific, clearly defined set of tasks. This is the AE's main job once the building starts.
Yeah, you can really think of this list as the AE's playbook. It's their core set of responsibilities. So what's in it? Well, they advise and consult with the owner. They're the official interpreter of all the contract documents, which is a huge deal. They observe the work as it's happening, making sure it actually matches the plans. They also handle a ton of the critical paperwork, reviewing and certifying payments to the contractor, looking at submittals for materials to make sure they're the right ones, and preparing any changes or modifications that need to happen. And then at the very end, they handle the big finish, preparing that final punch list and giving the official thumbs up for substantial and final completion.
So, all that stuff we just talked about, that's the standard package. It's the baseline, the core duties that come with the agreement.
Right. But what if your project needs a little more? What if there are unique challenges? Or you, as the owner, just want someone watching things a bit more closely? What happens when the basics just don't cut it?
Well, that's exactly where additional services come into play. I like to think of this part of the agreement as the a la carte menu. It lets an owner pick and choose specific extra services to perfectly tailor the agreement to what their project really needs. And this menu, it's usually broken down into 3 different tiers. You've got your big, comprehensive oversight options, then more specific one-off tasks, and finally, a plan for all the what-ifs. Let's take a quick look at each.
And you can really see the difference in scale right here. On one side, you have project representation, and that is a huge commitment. We're talking about having a full-time person right there on the job site, acting as the owner's eyes and ears, providing constant supervision. Then on the other side, you have other additional services, which are much more specific. Think things like preparing those final record documents, or even coordinating where the art is going to go in the new building. And that third tier, that's all about planning for the unexpected. These are the contingent additional services. Stuff you might not even know you'll need when you sign the contract. A classic example is when a contractor wants to substitute a material. The whole process of the architect or engineer reviewing that proposed change, that falls under this category. It's kind of like the agreement's break glass in case of emergency plan. But look, a great partnership is always a two-way street, right? It's not all about what the AIA has to do. The agreement also lays out, very clearly, the owner's responsibilities. And these are absolutely crucial for the project to actually succeed.
That's right, the owner gets their own checklist in the agreement. It covers everything from providing stuff like land surveys all the way to just making decisions in a timely manner. And you can't overstate how important this is for keeping the project on track.
I mean, think about it. One of the owner's key jobs is making progress payments to the contractor after the AE gives the green light. If that money doesn't flow, the entire project can just grind to a screeching halt.
Okay, so that brings us to the big takeaway here, the conclusion. And really, it's the one golden rule you need to tattoo on your brain when you're dealing with any of these agreements. And here it is. Even though we've been talking about standard forms, the source material gives a super clear warning, and I'm quoting here. It is important to review each agreement closely. And that's because, while those AIA and EJCD documents are common starting points, they almost always get modified. And if you're using a different type of agreement altogether, well, it could be wildly different.
And that, right there, is the most crucial point of all. You just can't assume you know what's in the contract just because you've seen one before. Every single project is its own little universe, with its own unique demands, its own budget, its own team, so it makes sense that its agreement is going to be unique too. At the end of the day, the only way you're going to build that rock-solid partnership is to actually read the blueprint.
So yeah, a perfect agreement is a fantastic start. It really sets the stage for success and gives everybody a clear playbook to follow. But it really makes you think, doesn't it? When the real-world chaos hits the fan, and you know it will, with unforeseen problems, delays, and arguments on the job site, how well does this perfectly crafted piece of paper actually hold up?